We've got some breaking news out of the NFL. The Bengals have their running back Joe Mixon out for Sunday's regular season finale against the Browns due to COVID. That's coming from ESPN as Mixon tested positive for the coronavirus. Ranked second in the league with a career high 1,205 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns as the Bengals have already clinched a playoff spot and the AFC North, but they're still in the hunt for the top seed in the AFC. They need to beat the Browns on Sunday and then also get some help. Mixon, I mentioned his season, only one of two players with 1,500 or more scrimmage yards. His 19 and 15 plus total touchdowns this season is with Jonathan Taylor. So again, taking a look at the scenarios for the Bengals, which clinched a playoff spot for the first time in about 5 or 6 years. A couple scenarios here for Cincinnati. Both of them have them having to win and then getting lots of help. So again, the Bengals for the first time in a long time in the postseason with a chance to get even more. But to get more, they'll be without their star running back in Joe Mixon. We've got NFL analyst Ryan Harris joining us. So what type of loss do you anticipate this will be for Cincinnati going up against Cleveland this week?
Well, the good news is Joe Mixon really hasn't been a huge force in the running game for Cincinnati. I mean, they barely rushed for over 70 yards in their last game against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's provided enough of a punch to provide that run game to keep defenses honest, but it hasn't been a focal point like it is with Tennessee and some other teams like the Patriots. But this puts more weight on the shoulders of Joe Burrow moving forward and Jamar Chase. They have to replicate what they did last week. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far without a run game. And the good news, looks like Baker Mayfield's going to be out for the Browns in this game. So a winnable game, to say the least, for the Bengals to go into this week.
Yeah, take me inside the locker room aspect of this, Ryan, if you can. Like, say, for instance, they're not going to have Joe Mixon. They're going up against the Browns. They have a shot, albeit a small percentage, to get the top overall seed. How do you approach this now uncharted territory of a Week 18?
Well, you have fun with it, first of all. When you face any challenge in the NFL, to get through it, you have to have fun. Hey, coach, I can run the football. Ryan, you're a lineman. It doesn't matter. But they do have a couple of other players, too. Perrine is a serviceable running back. Also, people are not aware, Joe Burrow's got a little bit of rushing ability. I wouldn't major in that. That's a little too dangerous. He's not that Josh Allen type. But in the locker room, everybody has to choose to carry more. It's not that you don't have a run game, it's that you have to be effective in other parts of your offense to offset it. Also, defensively, you got to get off the field to give your offense opportunities. So inevitably, at this point, this is why healthy teams win championships. It takes all 53 members of your team, and just because you have Joe Mixon out does not mean you cannot go out and win and give yourself a chance at that first seed in the AFC in addition to hosting playoff games. But this is a big loss at this point in the year. Fortunately, it's not long-term, but the Bengals need Joe Mixon, even though he hasn't been a dominant force in the run game.
And they anticipate that he'll clear COVID protocols by the time they get to the postseason. And they're not only going to be without Joe Mixon for this game, Ryan. Of course, a handful of other players, including Von Bell and Trey Hendrickson, just to name a few. You've called games this year with teams dealing with COVID. How have NFL squads been able to maybe go through and navigate a season now when guys are in, guys are out, they're not sure when they'll be back?
Well, it's really affecting players more than they want to say. I mean, I talked to the Chargers a couple of weeks ago, their players and coaches, and that COVID really affected Austin Eckler and others. The Chiefs at one point were affected with Travis Kelce and COVID. Coaches and players never want to admit and give an excuse, but I'm here to tell you it's the number one thing they talk about. Whether it's the testing, whether it's missing players at key times, it's getting to a point where it's affecting players and coaches at a high level. But the way to get, and one of the reasons why is because a lot of now practices will go to remote, right? If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you don't want to lose anybody else. Joe Mixon was in the huddle with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, right? So now it goes to virtual meetings. And one team that got affected like that last week were the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz was not sharp because they did all their practices on Zoom. Jonathan Taylor, that was the toughest 100 yards he got because all of their practices are on Zoom. I don't know about you, Tommy, but dancing in your pajamas at home isn't the same as going to practice. So teams are really getting affected by it. But at some point, you just have to understand you can't control COVID. You have to go out there with the guys that you have on your roster who are available to play. And that's on coaches to make sure everybody's ready as well.
Yeah, I don't know about you. Can only speak for myself. I like getting dressed. fully to get to work and
Me
do my
too,
job.
brother.
Joining
Me
you.
too.
Ryan Harris there, breaking news. Again, Joe Mixon out due to COVID, by the way. Our Josina Anderson confirming that news that he'll be out, and also our Jason La Canfora saying that he is asymptomatic. So that's relatively big picture good sign for the Bengals fans. Again, getting to the postseason for the first time in a long time. As we're seeing here, they can beat the Browns and maybe get some help to clinch the 1 seed and a first round bye, the only one in the conference, but they'll have to do it without Joe Mixon. They'll also have to do it without a handful of other guys that were placed on the COVID-19 reserve health and safety protocol list heading into this weekend's game with the divisional rival.